Hi guys, I'm Kesha. Welcome to the channel, to my wonderland. And today in our coffee time I have a very special video because somebody suggested that I do this video on my Instagram, so I decided why not, let's do it. So basically I posted on my Instagram a video that I did on books that are going to be adapted into movies in 2019, because as we all know, a lot of movies are being adapted from graphic novels, from books, and some are remakes. Like there's hardly any movies that are being released that are not based on previous materials. And so Cube Jam, whose channel I've been following on YouTube for a while, and especially when I had my big FUNKO obsession starting on YouTube, and he was also collecting a lot of those, we kind of got in touch, and he's the one hooking me up always with precious steel case editions that I can only get on the UK. He helped me with it and with The Shape of Water, which were still cover editions that I couldn't find in Germany. So anyways, he left a comment on my Instagram post and said, hey, why don't you make a top 10 of books to movie adaptations? So I was like, why not? Let's do it, because you know there are so many out there. And then I sat down and I started to make a list of some movies that are adapted from books that I have personally read, and of course there was a lot of books based on Stephen King novels, so I had to cut the list on those because else I would have only talked to you about Stephen King adaptations. So I decided that I'm going to make another video, and it's going to be best Stephen King book to movie adaptations, because there is enough material out there to make a separate video about it. So I decided not to pick all of Stephen King book to movie adaptations for this video. If you're new here, my friend, I'm Stephen King Trash. Hello, I'm Kasha, nice to meet you. First of all, I would like to talk to you about a trilogy. First of all, let me say that I am a person that I like to read the book before I watch the movie. Now, this is not always 100% possible, because many movies that you don't even know are being adapted from books, so it's too late when you find out. And sometimes I've been in the position where I watched the movie and then I realized it was a book, and then I was hurt and I was sad, and I still read the book because I just love to have the, you know, the source material where the movie came from, and I love reading books. So the first one that I want to talk to you about, it is a trilogy that I wanted to read without watching the movies. I avoided these movies for years and I got no spoilers for years. I'm good when it comes to avoid spoilers from things I don't want to be spoiled with, and this is, my friends, The Hunger Game. So The Hunger Game, it is a trilogy of books by Suzanne Collins. The first book came out in 2008, then 2009 and 2010, and we have the first book called The Hunger Games, then we have Catching Fire, and then we have Mockingjay. And the books came out, like I said, 2008 to 2010, and then the movies came after that. They decided to split the movies in 4 because they decided to make the last book into 2 movies, like it happens in a lot of these, you know, book to movie adaptations when it comes to like series of books, like it's happened to Harry Potter as well. And basically the first movie, Hunger Games, was released in 2012, Catching Fire was released in 2013, then we had Mockingjay Part 1 in 2014, and then we have Mockingjay Part 2 in 2015. So I read the books and watched the movies all in 2018. Before that, I had not watched the movies, and I was spoiler free, so I could go into the novels with a fresh mind. And I have to say, I was really pleased with the movies because I freaking love the books, except the end, which I was a little bit disappointed by. I was kind of let down. I was expecting like a bigger, better kind of battle end game, like really facing this end boss and everything, and it kind of disappointed me. But you know, that was like that in the book, so the movie couldn't do anything about it either. The Hunger Games still remains one of the best YA series adapted into movies, and part, I guess, it's because the writer of the trilogy, Suzanne Collins, was involved with the writing of the screenplay. We're in a dystopian world, a dystopian version of North America, and we have 12 different districts, and every year each district needs to send send a teenage boy and a teenage girl to fight in the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games were done to kind of put people off from starting, you know, to rebel against the government and things like that, because they have had in the past rebels. They just want to avoid it by showing the power that the government has. And basically in this Hunger Games, they just drop you in there and everybody has to fight for their lives until there's only one survivor. And so this Hunger Games is turned into like this big reality show, and everything is being televised so everybody can see what you're doing, who you're killing, and all of this jazz. And I just thought the book was fantastic. The first book was fantastic. The second one was my favorite one. And I think that they did a great job turning this into a movie. And we're following the character Katniss Everdeen, and actually her sister, her younger sister, is picked as a tribute, but she volunteers to avoid her sister being sent into the Hunger Games. And so we follow the story of Katniss Everdeen and her struggles fighting the games. I think the first one and the second one are the ones that I love the most because they're more based on the Hunger Games themselves. But if you have not watched these movies, there are a total of 4 movies, I would totally recommend them to you. Then we have The Silence of the Lambs from 1991, and this movie was done based on the novel by Thomas Harris from 1988. It's a psychological horror thriller film, and it is really not easy to bring this story into the big screen. We follow the story of Clarice Starling, and she is a young trainee for the FBI, and her job is to interview Hannibal Lecter, and he is a brilliant psychiatrist and a cannibalistic serial killer, and she decides to interview him because she's trying to arrest another serial killer called Buffalo Bill. This is an intense adaptation of the novel, and you know, thanks to Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, whose performances are brilliant, they made a fantastic movie. In 2007 we got No Country for Old Men, and this is based on the novel by Cormac McCormick from 2005. This is also the same guy that wrote The Road, which was also turned into a movie and was also fantastic. The reason why I decided to pick this one and not The Road is because from both of them I enjoyed this one a little bit more, and it might have been because of the cast, because the cast in this movie is just fantastic. This movie kind of balances comedy and horror, but it never goes overboard with any of them. We have stunning performances from Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Woody Harrelson, and Tommy Lee Jones. We follow the story of a Vietnam veteran that one day just stumbles upon $2 million that are the result of a drug deal gone wrong. So he takes the cash, he takes the money, and then he realizes that people are starting to follow him because they want their money back. And it is kind of like intense, and I don't even know how to describe this movie, but it's definitely a must watch. If you have not watched this movie, you have to. It is just pure cinematic, just enjoyment. I forgot to mention it's also by the Coen brothers, whom I adore. I just love their movies because they are always so special and so different, and I always love the atmosphere that their movies have. So check it out if you have not watched it yet. Then we have Fight Club from 1999, and this is based on a novel by the same name. The novel is from 1996 and it's by Chuck Palahniuk. I don't know, I probably butchered that surname, but he makes really weird, interesting books. The movie is centered in a man that is depressed, and then he gets to meet these businessmen on a trip, and they together decide to form this kind of fight club, and it is meant to be a place where you can fight other people without being judged. And it's kind of, you know, trying to fight the boredom that they have in their regular lives. But it is more than just men kind of bonding with the violence of fighting each other. It is also about trying to discover a deeper meaning and kind of figure out what life's all about. The writer himself applauded David Fincher's adaptation, and he also said that some simplification had to take place from the book because his books are very not simplistic. They're very complicated, and there's a lot going on, and sometimes for movies you need to tone everything a little bit down. Now let's go to the Stephen King movie that I have included in this list. So basically I could have included many Stephen King movies. We all know that most of Stephen King's novels have been turned into movies. Some of them are great, others not that great. But I decided to include one that had a deeper meaning for me, and that is The Shining. And it's because it's one of the first adaptations that I saw from Stephen King's novels. And I'm talking about the 1980 version from Stanley Kubrick, and it is based on the novel by Stephen King that came out in 1977. The dude's been busy for a long time. I also chose this movie because there are some exciting news. You know, guys, that Stephen King released a sequel book to The Shining, you know, a long time later. And this sequel, it's called Doctor Sleep. And basically it's being turned into a movie, and hopefully, if everything goes right, it's going to be released on the 8th of November 2019. And Ewan McGregor, which is an actor, I think it's a little bit underrated and I really like him, he's going to play Danny Torrance, and the excitement, guys, it's real. So now let's go back to The Shining. It's basically based on the story of Jack, and he is a writer, and he gets offered the chance to be the winter caretaker of this hotel, the Overlook Hotel. So he goes there with his family to spend the winter, thinking that it's going to give him time to, you know, write and work properly, because they're going to be cut off from civilization, because every winter there everything gets snowed in and there is no way to communicate with the outside. So he thinks, oh no, that's good, you know, I'm gonna be focused and I'm gonna write so much. But before you know it, Jack turns into a homicidal maniac and he's terrorizing his own family, and strange things start to happen at the Overlook Hotel. And it is a fantastic movie. It's just fantastic. Now, the movie does deviate a lot from the source material, and even one of the most popular and iconic lines that we see in the movie, it's not in the book. And that is, "All work and no play make Jack a dull boy." This is not a line that was in Stephen King's book, but it has become one of the most iconic lines from the movie. Then we have Schindler's List in 1993, and it is taken from a novel from an Australian author, Thomas Kennelly, and the original book was called Schindler's Ark, but in the US it was already released, the book was already released with the title Schindler's List, so this is what they took for the movie. This is an American epic historical drama, and it is by Steven Spielberg, and it is actually based in true events. It follows the story of Oskar Schindler, and he is a businessman, a German businessman, that he helped to save the life of over 1,000 mostly Polish Jews by giving them jobs and, you know, saving them from being killed. He basically took some of the refugees and gave them jobs at factories in order to save them in World War II. This is not an easy to watch movie because it is based on true events and some things are really harsh, but it is a must-watch movie that also portrays the compassion of the human species. Then we have a novel by Michael Crichton that was released in 1990. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's right, we have Jurassic Park in 1993. Now, this is a science fiction movie that holds a special place in my heart because I went to watch it with my dad when I was a kid to the movies. In 1993, I was 10. And I was taken to watch Jurassic Park. Bless my dad for taking me to watch these movies. And I absolutely loved it. Dr. John Hammond has created this park in which dinosaurs have been genetically cloned and they roam around, and he wants to open this kind of theme park so people can go and visit it. So he invites his grandchildren and a group of scientists, you know, as a test run to be the first ones to go to this theme park, and spoiler alert, it didn't go that well. One of the main differences between the movie and the books is that in the book there is a dinosaur that is being heavily mentioned, that it is not mentioned or appears at all in the movie, and that is the Procompsognathus. There, I gave it a try, and basically it is also part of the opening scene in the book that was very important. It was a very terrifying opening scene, and I'm not sure why they didn't decide to include these dinosaur in the movie. I believe maybe it was a little bit kind of a budget decision kind of thing, because now with the newer Jurassic World movies we have like all kind of genetic modification dinosaurs and all of that jazz, but still I would not change at all Jurassic Park from 1993. It's the best Jurassic Park done so far. fight me about it. Then I wanted to include an animated movie, and for that I chose Coraline from 2009, and it is inspired on the novel by the same name by Neil Gaiman that came out in 2002. And there's also a graphic novel, so if you don't want to read the book, even though it's very short, you can also choose the graphic novel. Actually, I happen to have the graphic novel here. And if you're looking for a cool read, I totally recommend this one to you. It is not for children or anything like that, because I have the feeling that people mistook the movie for a children's movie when it is actually dark. But if you're interested in reading the story of Coraline and you don't want to pick up the book, there is a graphic novel for you. We follow the story of Coraline, and she's a very adventurous, you know, kind of very curious girl. And when they move into a new house, she finds a door that opens, you know, to a parallel universe, and she goes there, and this universe seems to be exactly like her home, and everything seems to be like home, but it just isn't. It's just a darker, more evil, weird, creepy version of her life. Then we have The Exorcist from 1973, and this is an American horror supernatural movie. It is based on the novel by William Peter Blatty from 1971, and it has the same title, The Exorcist. And this was, together with Psycho, the two first horror movies that I've ever seen in my life, and the third one was Dracula. We'll get to that. The book was inspired on an actual exorcism that happened in 1949, and it was the exorcism of Rolando. This is the fake name that was given to a 14-year-old where the exorcism was performed on. And in the movie we follow this 12-year-old that is being possessed by the devil, and her mother is trying to do everything that she can in order to bring her daughter back, and there are two priests that try to perform an exorcism on her. Some very well-known directors actually rejected this movie, and one of them was Stanley Kubrick, and it was because, you know, this kind of movie back then presented a lot of challenges, especially because of the special effects, also the location where everything had to be done. But I think the movie did a great job, and even if you watch it now, I don't think that these special effects are that bad or that outdated. You know, I think the movie actually aged pretty well, and they did a fantastic job, because you need to remember we're talking here 1973. It has some kind of psychological themes as well, because we touch here the faith and the love of a mother and things like that, and for me it's just a 10 movie. 10 out of 10 recommend. If you have not watched The Exorcist, what are you doing with your life? And then, my friends, we have Dracula from 1992 by Francis Ford Coppola, an American horror story based on the book by Bram Stoker. Now, I watched this movie, I've mentioned this on videos before, so if you've been following me for a while, I'm sorry for repeating myself, but this is one of the first horror movies I've ever watched, and I think I watched it when I was still a little bit too young, and it has such a huge impact on me that I started dreaming about blood and vampires. You know, there's this scene at the beginning where Vlad sticks his sword on the cross and all the blood starts to drip from all over the room, and I fell in love with blood right there. That was the moment I realized I loved blood a lot. And I started having dreams about vampires and everything supernatural, and thank the Lord for this movie, because it totally changed me, and I think for the better. In 1462, Vlad Dracula had to go to fight the Turks, and when he comes back from the battle, which actually they won, he comes back home to find out that the love of his life, Elisabetta, has committed suicide. She committed suicide just because she received a letter and she thought that Vlad had died, so she didn't want to live in a world where he was dead, so she decided to commit suicide. But then he comes back home, finds her dead, and this traumatized him for life, and this is when he takes the sword, stucks it in the cross, and all the blood starts to come from all over the place. We jump forward now to 1897, and we follow the story of John Harker, and basically he has been called by the Count Dracula that lives in Transylvania, because he wants to buy some property in London so that he can travel there, and so he gets John to travel to Transylvania to make all the arrangements, and strange things start to happen, and he starts to write letters to his beloved Mina to explain all the weird things that are starting to happen at Count Dracula's place. Meanwhile, Mina is in England, and also really weird, strange things start to happen over there as well. And I don't know, if you have not watched this movie by now, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this is a classic that everybody should watch. It might be a little bit weird, some special effects might not have aged that great, let's be real here. but it is a movie that I will never get tired of watching, and I think it was a fantastic adaptation from the original book. And also the original book, if you want to read it, go ahead. It is actually really good. It's not so dry to read like most classics, and I absolutely loved it as well. So if you're interested in vampires and you've never read Dracula, or you have never watched the Coppola version of Bram Stoker's Dracula, do it now. So these are 10 book to movie adaptation that I have as my top of the list, because I think they did a great job taking the original source and created a great movie. Now, there are some movies that changed more than others, but sometimes you have to make changes in order for the movie to work. Some changes I understand and I support, and other changes I'm not so happy about, like maybe I should make worst book to movie adaptations, because you all know my top one. I'm not gonna tell you the name in case I do the video, but I'm gonna spill some tea if I do that video because there's a lot of hard feelings involved. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what you thought about my picks and which book to movie adaptations have always been your favorites. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for support, and not to miss any more coffee times with me. If you want to follow me on other social media as well, the links are down below, and I hope to see you all in the next coffee time. Bye!